Empower Her Play podcast. My name is Yasmin, this is Shafia, and this is Salma. And today we have Fatima Rasool, life coach, and also Qigong MSA coach as well.
Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum.
Lovely to see you guys.
Lovely to see
and
you.
Thank you for taking the time.
In person,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
nice
to
meet
in person.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
what I was going to say.
Online.
Yes,
Online,
always
yeah.
online. So firstly, can you explain a little bit what you do? Because a lot of people won't know what life coach is, and even Qigong? Qigong. What is that in practice?
So the life coach, so I'm also a Unani Tib practitioner as well. So I'll just start with that. That's kind of like, I'm a qualified Tib practitioner, which means I focus on Islamic medicine and holistic healing in terms of, food and diet and all that sort of holistic sort of approach to healing. And then I trained as a Qigong instructor as well. So Qigong goes back sort of 4,000 years back to Chinese medicine. So it's kind of what they would use as part of the healing process. So the physical movement and the breath to sort of, rebalance the body. And then I'm also a life coach in the Quranic science of the nafs psychology. So that kind of focuses on mind, emotion management to help us to sort of, change our behaviors to a point where we want to create certain results. And so how we can do that going to the root of the problem, which is normally mindset and sort of thinking processes. So that's what I do with the life coaching. It's very much kind of regaining that emotional balance and leadership, helping women to sort of get the results they want, help them to overcome the challenges that they have, but focusing on the mind more specifically.
Yeah. I guess each one works hand in hand as well, isn't it? Did it feel like one thing just led to another? Because it's a very holistic approach, isn't it?
Definitely. So the way I got into natural healing was because my little one, my number 4, he got eczema at the age of 3 months. And it was very new. We had no one in the family ever had eczema before. And I always had an interest in natural healing. But I think that just sparked that interest even more because I didn't feel the conventional way of treating it was actually dealing with the root of the problem. It was very much suppressing the symptoms. And, as a mum, you have that kind of gut feeling that this is not quite, at that time I kind of went into Chinese medicine to help him with the healing. But then that sparked my interest into training as a Unani Tib practitioner, which is basically Arab-Greek medicine. And then while I was doing that, part of Tib medicine, we focus on the 6 lifestyle factors, so that's what I'm going to mention. So the 6 lifestyle factors are basically what we deem as, if they're all in balance, that's when your body is in balance. So you have to focus on these 6 aspects. So
Take notes, girls.
So, food and drink.
You watched several times.
So food and drink, we all know diet, what types of foods we're having, air, and the type of air that we're breathing, the type of breathing that we're doing. Are we breathing properly?
Oh, wow.
Sleep and wakefulness, when we sleep, how we sleep, all that sort of thing, the whole sleep cycle. You've also got physical movement, obviously exercise, movement. You've got retention and elimination. It's like a test for me as well, like digestion. But the one that I found that a lot of us struggle with is emotional health and well-being. And that was one of the 6 lifestyle factors. And,
Chef, can you repeat that?
I'll have to test it. I'll have to test myself.
How many did you remember? You might need to do a little test.
Exercise, sleep. I'm there, aren't I? Yeah. Just 3 more.
So I think with the emotional health, because part of the training we had to, there's a concept that, physician, heal thyself. So we had to focus on our healing if we're going to go and help other people.
Yeah.
And, the Hakim would tell us that you need to be checking on yourself on these 6 lifestyle factors. And all of us, I felt myself that I was doing something with the other ones, but the emotional health and well-being, I was completely, it was not even on the radar.
What does that mean, though? What, like emotional? Everyone will say, are you okay? And I will say, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But what does that actually mean? What does okay mean?
So that's the thing. Sometimes we don't know ourselves. We're just kind of brushing things under the carpet. When we're feeling upset or angry, why is that anger coming? Where's it coming from? When we're feeling sad, where's that sadness coming from? Because a lot of the time, as women, we're just pleasing everybody else, doing all the roles that we have to play, right? And we're not focusing on ourselves. We forget who we are. We kind of suppress all those emotions because that's how we're wired, right? We're supposed to brush it under the carpet. And that's exactly what I was doing. So that made me think that, oh my gosh, I really need to, focus on this, right? And then it kind of led to me finding the Qigong and doing it myself because it's very much, Qigong is a practice which focuses on physical movement. You're incorporating the breath. So it kind of brings that physical, emotional balance in one go, basically. And it ticks so many boxes, circulation and blood pressure, all these things, it just ticks so many. So I thought, this is a good way of doing it. But then as I was doing it, I realized that a lot of our women unfortunately, this is how we're wired. We think that, emotional health is not on the radar. So I felt that I need to train into this. I need to train on it, and I need to help other women to do the same thing. And that led on to my sort of Qigong journey.
So did you go in with, I'm going to go in like into natural healing, or am I going to go into the Islamic kind of side of it and take it from the Sunnah? Or did it kind of go hand in hand? Because it can be different, isn't it? Because you mentioned Chinese medicine.
That's right.
Yeah, so which came first, if
so
one did?
Traditionally, you've got the three main medicinal philosophies, which is Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and then Unani Tib, which is Arab Greek medicine, because there's no such thing as Islamic medicine per se as a system. It was like the prophetic sayings about, health and food and drink, right? So Ibn Sina, he basically, amalgamated all of that, the Islamic input with Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, and you have something called Unani Tib medicine, basically, and it's more of a system. So that was more interesting to me because I felt like it's going back to my roots, even though Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, they follow very similar philosophies in terms of a holistic way of looking at health. So that was a natural thing.
Are they influenced by religion as well?
To some extent, maybe, but there's probably some input there. But to be honest, all of them have very similar philosophies, and it's just because, when you're looking at a human being, we are a holistic being. We're not supposed to see health as a separate, entity, and so they all probably, in some way, with their culture, whatever, and knowledge, have found the same sort of understanding. So
what technique would you use for someone who's maybe sad or going through like the emotion one? You were saying that's quite difficult to deal with.
So with the life coaching, that's what led me to the life coaching, because I felt that I really need to focus on emotional health and well-being, because a lot of women are struggling, whether it's, whatever it might be, relationships, it might be, goals or, ambitions that they've got. They can have all the best of plans and intentions, but if the mind's not in the right place, they're not going to get the success that they want, right? So that's when I trained in the life coaching, and specifically in the Quranic science of the nafs, because it's, again, back into our tradition. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't kind of just left us in this world to deal with that. He's given us the tools. It's just tapping into it. So what I do with women is, obviously, with the coaching, what we're trying to do is give them the tools to see what's happening. What thought process have they got? Is it even based on, facts? Is it just opinions? Is it experiences? Is it default thinking that they've got from the past, And once they start seeing where it's coming from, then they can see how they can change things. So once you start changing your thought patterns, it creates different feelings, because our feelings are coming from our thoughts.
Wow. Do you find something common across the women that you deal with? Especially from, I don't know if you deal with a lot of South Asian women, but do you see there's
community, I guess you could say, isn't it?
Do you see there's a common factor?
Definitely. I think a lot of us, and me including, we have lost ourselves. We don't know who we are. A lot of us have given so much to everybody around us, which is a good thing, but so out of balance that we've forgotten.
At what cost, isn't it?
At what cost. And, and this is one of the things this is what made me go into the life coaching as well, is that when I was working with the women in the Tib sort of arena, a lot of the women that would come with physical ailments, it always went back to some emotional trauma or some emotional baggage that they hadn't, or they suppressed. And this is how the body works.
That's a massive, a lot of research is now supporting that, isn't it?
Definitely.
Saying that a lot of our physical health comes from
generational trauma, is it? Is that new? I don't know if it's a new word, but it's a very buzzword at the moment, isn't it? Generational trauma. So can you explain a little bit about what does that actually mean?
So, it's a buzzword probably because there's more awareness now, because people are seeing that, because like I said, sometimes certain cultures, we're wired to just suppress and brush things under the carpet. And what's actually happening now is, like, for example, generations now are becoming more aware of the fact that, hold on, where is this coming from? Where's my trauma coming from? And it's sometimes passed on from their parents, who's passing on from, and it's because it hasn't been resolved, because there's this kind of stigma in our culture sometimes that, we don't need to, we just have to soldier on.
But do you feel like the word trauma is being used very lightly now?
I think there is obviously that other extreme as well, where people are like, there's a lot of labels, and we've got to be really careful, because sometimes, in Islam, obviously anyone can change, right? But if they want to. That's the thing. Sometimes we're like, well, that person is this and that's it. There's nothing we can do. No, anybody can change if they want to. But what I do with the coaching is I focus on giving empowerment to the women, the people that I'm working with, because to be honest, if you know what's happening with you, you changing your thought process, you changing your emotions and behaviors, you can change people around you without even them realizing. And that's how it works. When you start making that change, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala it's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Because now you're changing your mindset, you're changing how you show up, you're having more boundaries, maybe you're kind of having more self-respect, you know, because a lot of women lose that, you know, in the process of looking after everybody else, which is all great, but we need to recognize that we're still individuals in front of Allah. You know, our purpose of creation is to worship Allah. We don't lose ourselves in anybody else, you know. So I think that's, but yeah, definitely. I mean, Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this. You know, he's a very famous physician in sort of trauma, and he says there comes a point where the body says no, you know, and he's written a book on that as well, where if you keep suppressing those emotions, you keep doing it, eventually your body will come, will just say no in some form, some illness, some ailment. And that's why we really need to take charge of both together at the same time and give them both that value that they deserve, you know.
You said you went through healing yourself.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what you were prior to this?
Yeah, I was going to say, who was Fatima before all this?
What does that transformation look like?
I was probably what you'd call a chronic people pleaser. I just wanted to please everyone, you know, and I think, you know, and to some extent I probably tried my best, and I got, but you know what, after a while it catches up with you, and it's not meant to be like that, because you're not supposed to be trying to please everyone, because you can't, you know, and you get to a point where you, through your own learning, you realize that no matter what you do, some people are never happy.
That's
you know, and sometimes you learn that the hard way. And to be honest, there's a lot of lessons that I've learned the hard way, and that's why with the coaching, I really feel that I hope I can help women to maybe learn the lesson earlier or quicker than I did.
So you've got that lived experience that you can share with other women as well.
Because I felt like I got to a point where I felt like, you know, who am I? What am I meant to do? What can I give, you know, to the Ummah, you know? And a lot of us, there's so many women that I'm working with, and they're so talented, they're so capable, but they don't believe in themselves. This is the problem. We don't believe in ourselves.
We see that in MSA, isn't it? And even though we're not,
as a living example, because when she first joined MSA, she was so shy and had such high anxiety.
I did, I know.
She did. And you know, her famous line was, it would be, "Hi, I'm Shaf. I'm just the mum."
I'm just the mum.
That will always stick with me. That will always stick with me, because that was your classic introductory line kind of thing.
Because I thought, you know what, there's a group of ladies there all sitting there, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm a teacher," and I'm like, I'm just a mum.
Yeah.
But I was told it's not just a mum.
But today, now, the head is expanding. We have to make space on the sofa for Shaf. But I love
That's
it.
what I mean. It's all coming. There's so many women that have got so many hidden talents and skills, and just because other people don't believe in them, they've taken it all on board. They don't believe in themselves. They've lost their confidence. They've lost that compass, you know, and just helping them to find that again, helping them to sort of recognize that, you know, Allah comes first, right? And then everything else is in that context. And that just gives you so much sort of confidence to know that I can navigate this. I can start creating boundaries that are healthy, you know, because our relationships, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us boundaries, you know, we can't just do whatever we want, right? And so relationships work the same way, that we need to be able to engage in a healthy way, but with some level of parameters so people can respect you and what you can do and what you can't do. Because I would just say yes to everything. I wouldn't even think how I'm going to do it. I'd say yes, and then I'd be like, oh my God, how am I going to do it? And then I'd start going through a whole spiral. And I think a lot of women, you know, have similar experiences.
Even at making decisions, you wouldn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I would never trust my decisions as well. That was another thing. I'd kept thinking that I need to check with somebody, you know. And I think through the Thib, when I first got into the Thib, I started learning about mizaj and temperaments. And then I realised that what I was blaming myself for, you know, it was actually just a natural, you know, part of my, you know, personality, and just recognising how other people work as well, and how you need to recognise that's their temperament and how you can sort of work around that.
So do you like the change that's happened in you?
I guess you should ask my family. I definitely feel much more connected, you know, in terms of myself, my relationship with God. I feel much more like grounded. I feel like my relationships, I'm more aware of how I want to navigate those relationships. So, you know, that sometimes does mean that you need to let them know that what you can and what you can't do, what your needs are, right?
So you feel more empowered.
I feel more empowered. And I know MSA, that's what you guys focus on as well.
You should, because the sessions that we've been attending online recently that you've been doing, we've all benefiting, mashallah.
Yeah, I hope that's my intention.
No, we've really enjoyed it, actually. A lot of us do log on when we can. But one of the things I was saying is, when we first met online for that first sort of interview type thing for Qigong, and to see you now delivering these amazing kind of webinars, and you know, and a couple of people were saying, "Oh, who is this Fatima woman?" And I was like, "She's very different to the woman we met." But I was like, she's a very different to the person we met back in, I think it was COVID time, wasn't it? And I was just like, wow, like I can see that. And I've never known you very well or anything, but in 5 years I can see that transformation. And I was just like, wow, like you're just radiating this positive energy, and
you've got that soothing voice as well that we can listen to hours if we have to.
I think my kids might disagree, but
oh, is it? Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, I think a lot of people have noticed that as well. They've noticed the same thing, that you've grown. And I really feel that through the learning and helping other women and the healing, I feel like you're healing as you're going along and you're growing, and there's so many things that you're learning. It's a lifelong process, but definitely I feel like, definitely much in a sort of better place in terms of myself and my connection with.
Welcome to the Muslima Sports Association, where empowerment and sportsmanship meet for Muslim women. Dive into our world of sports, tailored exclusively for you. From the exhilarating teamwork of football and the strategic plays of netball to the challenging strokes of dragon boat racing and the precision of fencing, whether you're looking to find your strength in wellness classes or experience the thrill of the NFL, we've got it all. Join a community where faith meets fitness, courage and camaraderie. The Muslima Sports Association, where every Muslim woman discovers her champion within. Visit us today and kickstart your journey to greatness. Your sport, your sisterhood, your strength.
There was one question I wanted to ask, but I've got it written down here. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry,
Don't
tell me off.
That's fine. No. I'm fine. I was going to do it from the phone.
So how do you integrate Quranic wisdom with modern day challenges that women face in relationships, careers and personal well-being? So because obviously Quran is so old, and people watching this, and like non-Muslims especially, will be thinking, how is it relevant to today's life and lifestyle? How do we apply it?
Like I said, there's so many tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. It's just tapping into it. And so there's certain verses that I would have read ages ago, but I never saw it in the way that I understand it now. So, for example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us that, surely I will not change the condition of a people until they change what's within themselves. And it's really focusing on you having the power to change yourself first. And that really hit, because I remember that verse as a teenager, remembering, that was really like, but I never saw it in that context that, if I just focus on myself, Allah's promising me that He'll take care of the rest. And when I tell that to women, they're like, oh yeah, that's so true, because it's always about, well, it's their fault or it's the circumstance fault and I can't do anything about it. Yeah. But Allah's giving you that locus of control. He's saying, look, you've got some power, use it. And then I will take care of the rest. And it's so reassuring. It's so it's such a relief. And even when somebody's going through something so difficult, when you remind them that Allah doesn't give us a burden, greater than we can bear.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I think sometimes, especially the men of our community, they seem to pick and choose which areas of our religion they want to glorify and then keep to themselves and gatekeep. And they forget, or sometimes our community forgets, that the Quran is for all of us. It's not just parts that you can keep for yourself and parts that you want to glorify to help the community and pick and choose. You know what I mean? It's like some parts are relevant for women, but if the men want to take that part, they can take that part. But it's relevant to all of us, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's why we have to learn. That's why we can't rely on other people to translate it for us or tell us what the Quran is saying. You know what I mean? Like we've got to, and this is why I say to the women that I'm saying, look, we need to learn ourselves. Yeah. We need to understand ourselves so that we can then make those decisions and have that confidence to know, what, that's actually wrong. That's actually not right. That's a red flag. Otherwise we're just trusting people wholeheartedly, thinking, well, they must be right. They must know. And this is something that I learned as well, that, I always had this thing that if someone's, religious, that they must know everything and I trust them. I think a lot of us had that, right?
Yeah.
And then we learn through experience, hold on a second, they're still human beings. They might get it wrong, you know? And that's why it's so important to understand yourself so that you can say, you know what, that's actually wrong.
And the interpretation of the Quran as well is, it's dependent on that person interpreting it, isn't it? As well, it's like, what do they want to tell you? How do they want to tell you? It's up to their judgment. So it's really what you've said there is learning yourself. That's the knowledge and that's the power.
That's it.
But I think also, like you were saying, when you were talking about that particular ayah, it hits you at different times differently. Things hit you. Like you read it as a teenager and you just read it. It was just something. But at certain points, it's Allah sort of opening that for you as well, opening your ears and your heart to be receptive of the message as well.
Sometimes you'll open the Quran at an ayah and you think, how relevant, because you were in pain or you are
going through something
and it's like that relevance comes right in front of you.
Allah's talking to you directly through the Quran, though, isn't it?
And that's what the Quran's meant to be. It's supposed to be a comfort for the heart. Yeah. Right? And that's, when you start seeing it that way, that, because people can be very selective, and that's why it's so important that we're not dependent on other people to interpret our deen. Obviously, there's certain things that we won't, the technical side of things, fair enough, but the Quran is for all of us to really understand and to find solace in, and that's why, for me, doing the coaching based on revelation is so reassuring for me as a coach, because I know that this is like revelation. This is there's no two ways about it, and I think for obviously my clients as well, same thing, they just feel like, okay, this is Allah saying it, how can I question that? Otherwise it's a theory.
But when it comes to kind of like medicine and health, everybody wants proof, they want the studies, they want the research. Is there enough now that also supports the Quran?
I mean, there's always going to be things that are going to be proven as we go along. But as Muslims, we've got to recognize that part of our yaqeen is that this is the truth. Whether we understand it or not, whether we've the scientific proof. And as we know, so many things have been scientifically proven, right? And there's probably still going to be stuff further down the line that's going to be scientific. And that's fine, But we should always remind ourselves that we know as Muslims that this is the truth. Whether we understand it, whether we know the scientific reasons or not, this is the truth and this is the word of Allah. And I think that really, like I said, gives you the confidence. When you're sort of reconnecting back to Allah in that way, it then really helps you with your relationships, because now you're coming from a place of confidence, from a place of, that kind of discerning what's right and wrong, rather than trusting somebody else. And then you're feeling like, you're going through all these sort of emotions because you're feeling like, I trusted them. And, and it's because creation is creation. We have our limitations, right?
So is there enough guidance when it comes to the mental health side of things?
In terms of
the Quran, because when it comes to like Sunnah foods, we've got books on it. We've got loads and loads of books on Sunnah foods and what we should do. Even with our body and so on, what we can put in, what we can't. The forbidden and halal and haram. But what about like when it comes to mental health? Is there enough?
There's so much material on mental health from a very long time. So even going back to Ibn Sina, like I said, the focus on mental health was even back then. Because those people like Imam Balkhi, and they've written so many things on, what we would not probably call talking therapies now, like CBT, He was talking about that thousands of years ago, So I'm saying that there's so much material. Obviously, there's so many different angles, so much different emphasis, but that's part of our tradition from a very long time.
So do you think it's a taboo subject that we still not want to talk about within? Is it a community thing, or because Islam's already had it, but we still try to shy away from it? It's like, you still get the comments like, oh, read more of the Quran, be more religious, and you'll be okay. But
don't want to tell someone I might be feeling a little
stigma,
bit.
There's in the community,
isn't there?
And I think that's cultural. That's that cultural influence. I think because Islamically, this has been written about for many, many years. It's not a new subject. Mental health has always been there. We've had, for example, we were one of the first people to open, hospitals. And part of that was, we would have wards where we were looking after people with, mental health issues. There were certain treatments for that. So the tradition has it all. But I think maybe the cultural influence, maybe the stigma that's attached to it, a lot of people maybe are wired not to talk about it, or maybe scared to talk about it. I mean, now I think maybe the generations now are more aware, obviously with just a general awareness anyway. So maybe they are looking into it. But Islamic psychology goes back, way back. But it's, like I said, so many different ways of looking at it,
That's reassuring, actually. But so for anyone who's sort of watching, thinking, so like imagine, I'm always thinking of mental health actually, but you'd think of seeing a counsellor. How's a life coach different from just going for counselling?
So with the life coaching that I do, it's very much empowering the client to give them the tools to make the changes. So my job as a life coach is really to make them see what's actually happening with their specific thoughts, what's happening with their emotions and why they, feeling that way, and sort of just making them see how they can make the change. The whole point is that they become independent and then move on and so be able to then carry on making those changes, rather than they talk to me and I'm like a crutch that they have to rely on. They feel better and then they go back to how it was before, or they don't have the success, So obviously there's so many different types of counselling. Obviously I can't speak on everything, but the coaching for sure, it definitely is more empowering the client, giving them the tools, making them go back to the root of the issue, which is really the mind management. Because, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us in the Quran as well that, indeed in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find that security, that tranquility. So that connection between thinking or remembering Allah and finding that solace, it's a formula for life. How we think is how we're going to feel.
Yeah.
So, a lot of us are like, well, I feel angry and there's nothing I can do about it. It's just how I am, But that feeling of being angry is always going back to some angry thought. Where's that angry thought coming from? Is it based on reality? Is it based on some default thinking? Or is it something that's just focusing on the past that we can now shift to the present and show the person where you now have power to change things,
I personally, for me personally, I can't get past a particular issue that I think, okay, I'm going to let it go. But then something will trigger it and I go back to that point and I think I can't get past it. It makes me angry. And when I see people that are associated with that particular issue or that situation, I get angry. And if somebody in that situation is like me, what would you advise them to try and get past that
in terms
and forget
of the
about
anger?
it? Yeah.
So obviously we go back to, so why are you feeling angry? What are the thoughts? What is the situation? Is it something that was in the past that, yes, we acknowledge, but is it something that we can't really change it? What can we do now to make you see that, okay, I can't change what happened in the past, but I can now change the future by doing what I can in the present. So it's really making the person see that, yes, that happened. Yes, it was difficult. But now you can change it. If that means you might need to have more boundaries, you might need to, there's certain people that have maybe, that anger comes from, maybe because they do certain things that kind of, then maybe you need to navigate that relationship in a certain way. Maybe you need to take steps where you're now focusing on, right, now, what can I do? How can I change it so my future is different? So I'm not always feeling this anger. How can I prevent myself from being in a situation that's going to potentially make me angry? So there's so many, it really depends on the specific situation, because some people's anger can be from lots of different reasons, right? For some people, they're stuck in the past. For some people, that's really difficult. They just can't move on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of reminding them that, like I said, the past can't be changed, but what can we do now?
There's giving time helps. Being away from that person, the person that makes you angry or causes the problem. And for me, in my experience, I've given time and it's worked for me in that way, to be honest.
So again, it depends on a specific situation. Sometimes even communicating with that person, but then there's situations where you can't communicate with that person. So, it's all very specific. Sometimes just having an open discussion and letting that person know what your parameters are, what your needs are, what you can't accept and what you can, that helps. But for some people, maybe you can't have that communication. You might need to step back and say, for now, it's too difficult for me to approach this person, so maybe I need to take a step back. So it really depends on the specific situation and then be able to gear what to do next.
Can you give us an example of someone's life you've changed? Like, how were they? I don't want names or specific examples, anything, but just like how were they when they came to you, and how have you seen them change?
Oh God, there's so many different ones. So I had one lady come to me. I'm still working with her. She came to me a good few months ago, and she was in a complete mess. Like I remember my first call with her. She was like distraught. My husband doesn't care about me. He doesn't love me, and I just don't feel appreciated. And she was in a really, really bad state. And as we've been working on it, and focusing on her, making the changes. She's now at a point where her husband's like, I'm never going to leave. I'm just going to be attached to you all the time, And I said to her, it was because I said, she's the one like pushing back. And I said to her, do you remember that? And she goes, I know. And it was all about her just finding herself again and seeing him because she was kind of like creating lots of stories in her mind. Oh, he's this and he doesn't do this. And anytime he'd do something, she'd just create a whole story about he doesn't care about me, And once she realised that actually that was all, a lot of it was to do with her own thinking that wasn't based on fact. He does want to spend time with her. He does. No. But when she's snapping and she's doing all of this, because, like I said, the thoughts were making her more irritable. She was focusing more on keeping herself really, really busy and getting to a point of exhaustion that she wasn't able to show up for him the way, probably they both wanted, right?
And I was thinking these changes, like he's probably thinking, wow, I like this new version. And that's sometimes attractive as well, because when you're miserable, nagging, we've all gone through those phases, right? But it kind of causes more drift, doesn't it? It causes more distance.
I mean,
sometimes, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just seeing it as a different kind of way. But
you're right. I think the way you show up at the end of the day, if you want a certain thing in your relationship, and I'm obviously even with, parents with kids, kids are the same. They want to see their mum in a good place, happy. And that doesn't mean that we can't set boundaries and tell them this is right, this is wrong. But we want to choose the battles. We want to just be able to focus on that connection. Yeah. And when we start focusing on that connection, it's like we mirror each other in relationships. When you smile at somebody, it's natural the other person's going to smile back. And it's the same in a marital relationship. You know, when you show up a certain way, naturally the other person might be a little bit skeptical at the beginning.
What does she want?
Is she for real? You know, is she for real? But they obviously, you know, naturally, you know, as human beings, we want to reciprocate, because that's how, you know, if you're showing up a certain way, the other person naturally wants to do that as well. And if you keep working on that, that's how the relationship improves. And that's what I mean by when you start working on yourself, that's what I mean by the ripple effect. It naturally has an impact on the other person.
Our friends made a comment the other day, isn't it? That we've noticed a certain outlook change from one of our friends. And she was mentioning that she's seen a change in other people, but we said actually we've seen a change in you and how you now have a positive outlook.
The way
She became that character from Friends where everything was amazing one day, isn't it? It was literally like that. It was like, wow, this is so great. Wow, that's so great. You know,
lots of positive energy.
And I was like, is it or is it you? Isn't it? And that's what it was.
That's natural, though, isn't it? When you're enthusing that positive energy, naturally that's going to have a knock-on effect with somebody else.
Absolutely.
It's how we work. We mirror each other.
Yeah.
When you're irritable, when we have that angry face, naturally the other person's going to have a bit of a kind of, you know, because we marry each other. You know, even if we're not saying anything angry, but we've got that demeanor. You know, we've done it before when we're washing the dishes, or we're like, we're like really scrubbing, or you know, the kids
banging their thing when you get attention.
Looking out the window. You know, it's the demeanor, it's the energy. You know, and kids are kids, or you know, even other human beings, other adults, they pick it up. We all do. You know, so it's kind of like I said, once you start taking that power back, focusing on yourself, it's amazing. And you know what? It's Allah's promise. That's the thing. That's what Allah's promising us. Focus on yourself, take back that control, and I'll help you with the rest. And honestly, I've seen that.
So important,
that
isn't
is
it?
so true.
So important.
So if anyone wanted to get in touch with you to learn a little bit more, they needed help, how would they do that?
They can follow me on Instagram. So it's Fatima Rasool. I think it's .lifecoach. They can also email me at Fatima Rasool _lifecoach at outlook.com.
We'll put all the details
I'll
on
let
our...
you, I'm sure they can contact you. But yeah, I mean, that's probably the best way to
Thank you. It's
contact me.
been really interesting.
It's been a pleasure to meet you.
And I think we might all book in some sessions.
I definitely do, because she's a bully.
Oh no, okay, oh God.
It's how you're seeing it, Shaf.
Give me some notice.
Oh, mashallah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it'd be really helpful for our viewers.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching the Empower Her Play podcast. You can download all of our previous podcasts on whichever platform you use, and we will see you next time. Thank you.